Welcome, everybody, to the April 14th, 2021 Planning Commission joint work session with the Commissioners of Poolsville. Is that right?
That's it.
All right, Jay, now's you.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Our plan for tonight, I wanted to kind of go over it before we start and give you a little overview of what's going to happen. Our goal is to be done at 9 o'clock, okay? And if we can get done sooner, that's great. But the purpose tonight is to deal with the sewer allocations, the sewer system, and have a background all on sewer. We're not really going to go into water. And so if we come off topic, one of our presenters will probably say, hey, we're off topic, and that's a topic for another day, and you can make a note of it and we'll go to another day. We're not going to get too far into the money issues. We're going to touch on that as well, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, and we're not going to get too far into specific allocations, like what property would get what. We're not going to go too far into that rabbit hole. And finally, we're not going to get into like impact fees and how to pay for things on a specific basis. And we figure if we can just keep it on track, we should be able to do anything that you need to do, answer any of your questions. If you feel that you have a lot of questions, kind of like a student in the classroom, and you're falling behind with like a key concept because everything builds on it in the presentation, just let us know, and we would be happy to like have a one-on-one or a two-on-one to answer any of your questions so that we can get through tonight. So the way we're going to do it, Wade is going to give our presentation, and he's going to talk about everything, assuming that you don't know anything except that sewage comes out of your toilet and goes into a pipe and goes from there. So we're going to start from that. And then John's going to give you the specifics on what has to happen with the thing. And Martin, got your hand up, but you're muted. Do you need anything?
Should we save all of our questions to the end? Is that what you're saying? Like you don't want to be interrupted with questions? It sounds
No, please interrupt me.
But
Okay.
if we find that the group's like, if it's just you're really not getting a concept or anything, then we'll just say, okay, well, I mean, we're not going to blow you off. We're going to say, okay, well, we'll get to you, and we'll talk about it later outside.
We want to keep moving. I got it.
So, right. And so that's it. So we're going to basically try, I like to always begin with the end in mind, right? Where do we want to be at the end of this meeting? We want to be in a situation where you don't just get to know, are we good or bad with sewer, right? That's the end of the goal. We want you to understand how it's calculated so that next year and the year after you can understand how things impact this and make your decisions based on. So our goal is to give you the foundations to make decisions on those recommendations, but you won't be making those decisions tonight. So with that, Wade, you want to go ahead?
Sure, Bobby, you want to give me the controls? So I can share my screen.
Yep. You got it?
Got it.
Okay, happened. Here we go.
Nope, not yet.
Shows I am screen sharing.
Host disabled participants screen sharing. That's my prompt I get every time I try to share.
Ah, come on, thing.
I see your screen, I believe, or somebody's screen.
It says I'm sharing with you.
Yeah, so Bobby, you need to hover over, go to participants
Yep.
and click the up arrow, or click on participants, and then
Oh, I gotta find Wade.
you right click and then make him a co-host.
Wade, come up here.
Click on his name. Yeah, there you go.
And make him the host.
Yeah, so click on Y Yoast.
Yep.
There you go.
Got it. Okay.
Kevin.
So, everybody see that okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. So yeah, like Jay said, if you guys have questions as I'm going through this, I'm trying to be very thorough. And they're not, overburdening concepts we're talking about here. So I've broken it down in simple categories. And hopefully it answers a lot of the questions that I've received from different commissioners and planning commission members lately. So we'll start out right now that talk about where the data comes from. I think Martin asked some questions, verification of the data, how is the data validated? And actually that's controlled by Maryland Department of the Environment. They have a process in place to make sure that the numbers are calculated correctly. So you see in the left-hand side there's a series of flow meters. And there's flow charts on here. They're changed out weekly and they have to be maintained at the site. The flow also is calculated by a totalizer. And what that means, it just continuously totalizes the flow and it doesn't re-zero to every 1 billion gallons. And so that's about 4 years worth of that it keeps totalizing before it resets. So every day the operators come in and they log in the numbers of the totalizer and then subtract it. And that's how you get your gallons per day. Very simple. We are mandated by Maryland Department of the Environment to do annual calibrations by a third party, and we have to prove to them that we do that. All of our operators are licensed by the state, and they, like I said, 365 days a year, they have to take these numbers down and log it in. And the important thing about them being licensed is that they are legally responsible for making sure that they have the correct data. If they were to falsify the documents or anything of that nature, they could be fined or actually imprisoned. So they all know this. We go to classes all the time. Licensed operators do. So the numbers that they're getting are reported correctly. So the superintendent takes these monthly gallons per day, puts it into a monthly operating report that goes to MDE. It includes a lot more things besides just the flows. I mean, the sampling data results, operational information. It's 4 pages worth of data that goes in once a month, and it's all given to MDE and they review it. The annual audit by MDE is very important. An inspector comes out once a year and sits down with the superintendent, goes through all the records. It's an 8-hour process, and to make sure that everything is done correctly and according to the process and procedures that are put in place by Maryland Department of the Environment. So is everybody good with this?
Hey, wait, this is Carrie.
Yeah.
Just for clarification for our folks at home who may be watching, you're talking about, you're not saying that someone from MDE is doing all of this. It's our team that.
Yes.
Right.
It's our employees that are licensed by the state to do this. But an annual inspector or an inspector from the Maryland Department of the Environment does come out once a year to go through all the records and make sure everything is done as it's supposed to be.
The MDE regulates all of this.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
All the wastewater plants in Maryland are run the exact same way.
Hey, wait, is it logged in like via software, or is it just an old-fashioned paper and pencil?
It's an old-fashioned paper and pencil, and you can't even have whiteout on there if you make a mistake. If you make a mistake with the numbers and you have to white out to correct the number, you have to put in your logbook why it was done, it initialed it, so that the inspector knows you're not falsifying anything. So no, it's very, very strict on everything they do. But yeah, all those records will have to be maintained and transferred manually into a program that MDE has. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the wastewater capacity report. So we take the numbers that are generated by the annual averages each month, which you get your annual average for the year. The purpose of doing a wastewater capacity report are 3 things. Really, you want to identify if there's a problem with the wastewater plant and it's approaching its capacity. You want to be able to inform all the decisions makers of when they need to take a look at curving the new connections, or do they start making improvements to your wastewater system. And we're at the point where you look at the capacity report and you see, wow, there's not a lot of capacity there. So that's why we're having this meeting, because we're going to do something about it. Okay. So when we do the averages, we have to use a 3-year rolling average per MDE. So I have 2018, 19, and 20 laid out here. And you can see 2018, 764,000 was our annual average for that, which is over our permitted flow of 750 gallons per day. And you can see I put the rain on those years with it too, just to let you see exactly how dramatic and how connected they are, the flow data versus, the rain data. And it just shows to show you that we have an I situation, which is leaky sewer pipes. So using those three numbers there, we have a 3-year rolling average of 668 gallons per day. So you subtract that initially off of the 750 gallons per day, gives you 82,000 gallons per day. And I can't see the rest of my screen of how many allocations that is, but
Hey, Wade.
yes,
Hi, this is Jeff.
yes.
On 2018, when we had 764,000 gallons, and you said that was exceeded the permitted flow of 750,000 gallons, did the town of Poolsville pay a penalty?
No, it's not a penalty unless, and I want to get to these, just some categories coming up here, you'll see, unless you're considered hydraulically overloaded. And just 1 year of this does not, if you've had a year of this and some problems, like an overflow, sewer backup, bypass of your systems, then yes, you would have an issue. But if you don't have any problems and you handled it, you're okay. That make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So in our numbers for our allocations, we use 325 gallons per day. The state uses 250. We've always been conservative in this manner, and we should always be this way. It's worked out well for Poolsville, so we'll be maintaining that, I guess.
Well, can I ask a really dumb question then?
There's no such thing.
Wait till you hear it. If there's no penalty for going over, why do we worry about going over?
You're going to find out. Give me a few minutes when we get to it.
Okay,
I'm going to walk you right there.
I don't, by the way, I don't in any way at all mean that we should ignore the 750,000 as a maximum cap. Yeah.
Okay. So carrying on with the capacity report, how it's developed. So I'm just breaking down how the report, I think that this is typically what I did every year for the planning commission and commissioners to see exactly how we get to the numbers. So you guys, we take all the allocated taps that are out there, subdivisions that are in development, or permits that are issued aren't online yet, and there's some that are out there just by agreement from a long time ago for dedicating wells and certain things. So the names right there, you've probably seen them: Cahoon, Harts, Jameson, Highfield. They've been in the planning process. So that's 26 taps in that little group right there, which equates to 8,450 gallons per day. And then we have Brightwell. There's 14 taps there. Left, Westerly Grove is 44 taps, and then you have the commercial, which is the Donegan piece down on Fisher Avenue in Woodin, at 12,753 gallons per day. So that all adds up to the 40,053 gallons per day. Subtract that off the 82, you land on 41,947 gallons per day. That right there is your capacity. Not a lot. Or it could be 129 potential allocations. And we'll get into that deeper in a minute also. And you certainly have under consideration right now, there's two bigger developments, the Willard and the Bricken property, and they are 62 taps and 66 taps respective of each one. And of course, the Willard property is listed as a super priority allocation in the comprehensive plan because of its location.
Hey, Wade,
Yeah.
Does the word tap refer to an individual residence?
Absolutely.
And how about a business?
So we do equivalent dwelling units, and it's calculated on a WSSC schedule on gallons per the type of use that it is. And that's how we determine the EDU.
Oh, so just for an example, is Dunkin' Donuts one tap or several?
It's calculated on square footage of a restaurant, and it depends on the number of seats in there. So it's a whole calculation to do it. So no, it's not 325. It's probably 450, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's up there. Bobby, do you know what it is?
It's 450.
450. So yeah, I know it's higher than a regular tap, but so that's how it's calculated. There's an actual specific formula.
Yeah, I declare I'm lost now. So
Okay.
so one residence is one tap, but Dunkin' Donuts can't be 450 taps.
450 gallons per day.
Oh, 450 gallons a day. Okay.
Yes,
So-
yeah.
It comes down to like fractions or math. Okay, I hate that too. But everything, 1 equals 350. Okay.
Oh, one tap is 350
One
gallons.
tap isn't that the right number that we use?
325.
325. So 1 equals 325. So if you're going to convert gallons per day, you divide it by 325. And then that's how Wade got the 129 taps. He divided 41,947 by 325 to get 129.
Okay.
And so then you do it the other way for Dunkin' Donuts. If they're going to use 650 gallons per day, that would be 2 EDUs or 2 taps.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for that clarification.
All right, I'm gonna jump on the question queue. So along those lines, it's I heard you say that with Dunkin' Donuts being a restaurant, what about like where that vacant space where Banana Tree used to be? If a non-restaurant comes in there, what would be the equivalent taps for, say, a retail like Banana Tree versus say another restaurant opens up in that same space?
Really not much difference when we're talking about so the whole space, the whole
Square footage of the area.
the whole area itself is already calculated into an existing thing. So if someone wants to go in there, unless it wouldn't even enter into this calculation that we're talking about for water and sewer. This is for new construction.
Okay, so the allocation's already there. So whether it's one type of business that's not a restaurant versus another business that might be a restaurant. I'm thinking about some of the vacant not lots, but the vacant spaces, the vacant commercial spaces. And depending what type of business would move in there, would that have an impact on the tap calculation?
And typically no, because the whole strip mall itself has a calculation for it.
Gotcha. All right.
Same as, yes, they're all done the same way. So unless there was a water park or some large, great big user that was going to go into space, we don't even consider it. And it just kind of gets folded into the whole program.
Can I jump in one thing just to put a hook for everybody to remember? We've defined how you calculate TAP, which is also called an EDU, okay? That is the number then that you'd use as the multiplier when you deal with impact fees / connection fees, okay? So when you figure out how do we go from water usage to money, that's how you make the jump. Every
Exactly.
TAP is equal to, in the old days, an impact fee, in the new term, connection fee. And so then if you multiply that out, that's the money that you would receive for the number of taps, which should be equivalent to the amount of infrastructure you'd have to pay for. You see how you get the calculation out to money that way. So taps is what turns you into money.
Okay. Now that Jay messed you guys up now.
No, it's not okay.
Well, one last thing.
Jay used the term EDU. I don't know what those letters mean.
Equivalent dwelling unit.
Equivalent dwelling unit. So that's like one tap equals one EDU then.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, then how do we make a jump to dollars?
So your impact fee is based on one EDU. So 12,900 and whatever it is right now, one EDU it costs that much.
Right. Yeah. Consider it like changing currency, so that's how you're doing it. And the reason it's EDU is the basic building block of everything is how much a single family home uses. 325. That's a dwelling unit. Right. But then we have to kind of make it equivalent, and that's how you get to commercial, by making it equivalent to what a dwelling unit uses.
Okay. So if a developer wants to build one house, they would pay one EDU's equivalent of money, which is $12,900 to connect.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Wade, before you go on, I want to talk just about the 80% rule, because we kind of hit that on the last slide, right, with MDE and the wastewater capacity plan.
Yes.
Right. That would be, yeah. So one part of tonight is to dispel any misbeliefs. And you were told about the 80% rule that said MDE is concerned when you go over 80% of your capacity, which we would be at right now. And it made everybody, at least when it was presented, everybody was kind of concerned saying, well, we can't do any more because we're at 80%. What that rule really means is when you get to 80%, you need to give MDE a wastewater capacity management plan. And what that says is, with the last 20% you have left, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to get more capacity? They're not going to limit you or stop you till you get to the 100%, but they want to know 20% in advance of that. So the analogy I always use to make it simple is that's when your gas needle is at a quarter tank. Okay, your car isn't running out of gas yet, but you better be looking for a gas station and plan on how far you can go before you do run out of gas. And that would be the equivalent of the 80% rule. So it's not the end. It's just the fact that it's like the warning track in baseball. You better be paying attention.
Okay, good.
I got a quick question. Are we at a quarter tank or are we at empty?
We're at a quarter tank. We've been at a quarter tank I've been doing these wastewater capacity reports for several years now, and our flows have gone up and down because it's not a housing issue. It's an I&I issue, and we're gonna get to that. So the problem is not the number of homes. And by that last slide, when I showed you 2018, we've gone down consecutively in years as far as flow goes, but it's directly related to the rainfall, not the number of houses. We put more houses on, our flow's gone down. So it's not homes, even though it's all mixed in the same bowl. It's about the I&I that's a problem, not the houses. Okay.
And to continue the analogy, Carrie, I mean, we'll keep that analogy is we're not on the empty tank, but you're out west where you have lots and lots of miles before you're going to get to the next exit. And you have to make those miles. So you need to stop now, not stop development, but stop for gas to fill up so that you can make the extra mileage. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make your planned trip on the amount of gas in your tank, I guess is the clearest analogy.
So the point of this meeting is to come to a plan to fix the I&I?
That's part of it. The biggest part is really to educate you guys.
Okay, swell.
To
Thank
bring
you.
everybody up to speed. That's exactly what it's for.
Yeah, okay. Great.
It's actually to set the baseline and reset the baseline from where we've been over the last year and a half.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay, so inflow and infiltration. Because the report, like we all been saying, it's not all about allocations and what capacity is out there for that. It's about inflow and infiltration. And like Jay had said about the 80%, it's the whole report. Once you get to 80%, is to inform the decision makers on how to move forward and prevent problems from occurring. We have had overflows in the past. I remember in 1998 and 99, the West Bend subdivision, before we started doing our full relining projects, had some serious backups into homes during heavy duty rain events. And I've, none of you guys want to go out there and talk to a resident when they have 4 foot of sewers backed up into their basement, and you have to explain, why that's the problem, and it's not good at all. And so we don't want to be there again. So there's nothing that we need to do except fix the pipes. It's priority. It will always get worse. And right now we're seeing increased wastewater operational costs. On a dry month, our electric bills are probably $10,000. A rainy month, we jump up to $15,000. It disrupts the wastewater treatment process. There's a food to microorganism ratio for as the sewage comes in, and once it gets diluted with all the rainwater that comes in with it, it messes up the biomass. The bugs can't treat the break down the organics as well as they usually can. And you can't dewater the sludge when you have so much water going through the process. So it just messes everything up. It's hard on the equipment, extra pumping all the gallons. I mean, you're talking about spikes from you're pumping 500,000 or 600,000 gallons a day. You jump up to 2 million gallons in a day during rain events. So that's significant. And the problem will only get worse if it's not addressed. John, it's you.
All right.
I have a quick question, Wade.
Okay.
So what does inflow mean? Does inflow the good stuff and infiltration is the bad stuff?
No, they're both bad things. And inflow is basically if there's a pipe or a manhole or something that's open and water can go directly into it. Infiltration would be a crack in a pipe underground and water's getting into it.
Okay, great. I
That's
thought
the
that,
difference.
I thought maybe the inflow is when you flush the toilet, so that should be in the pipe, and infiltration should not be in the pipe. Okay.
Good question. Good
Clear,
question.
thank you.
We're going to get into that very shortly.
Oh, swell, thank you.
Okay.
All right, John, you ready?
Next slide.
Okay.
All right. You asked about inflow and infiltration. This is a diagram of what are the typical problems. And in our system, we don't have a lot of inflow issues. Most of it's infiltration because of two things: the age of the materials that are in the ground, and second of all, the geology that's involved. I don't know how many people know that typically if you dig about 4 feet down into the ground in Poolsville, you're probably going to run into rock. And it kind of acts like a bathtub. So when it rains, all that water goes into those trenches and follows the pipes, because the pipes are the deepest part of the infrastructure for the town. Now, we don't have any stormwater sewer connections that you can see to the right of the slide. That would be an inflow issue. But we do have some foundation drains that are connected to the system, and sump pumps are one of those things. And back in the day when construction was done, there was a saying that the solution to pollution was dilution. And you typically would try to go ahead and dilute your sewage so that you would be able to not really treat it, but it's not as potent. So we have manholes and manhole covers. The town has gone ahead and put some what we call bowls in the tops of those covers to help to try to keep the water that's out on the roadway from getting into the sanitary system through the manholes. But we do know we have cracks in some of our pipes. One of the things that we talked about, the taps. If you look at the laterals and lateral connections, those are taps. That's what we call them. We call them lateral connections, and they tie into the main system. Now, the problem is that back in the day, when some of these systems were connected, it was just simply cut a hole in a pipe and shove a piece of pipe into it, and then use a cloth and a little bit of asphalt or tar to close up those joints. So some of our joints are not that tight. For instance, I'm going to give you some numbers here real quick. When we did the westerly subdivision and lined those lines, and we made connections up to the property line for the laterals that came in, that pump station used to regularly get, in a rainy day like today, 1 million gallons of flow into that pump station. And what we see now is anywhere from around 200,000 to 150,000 gallons per day. So we were able to remove a significant amount of infiltration into the system. That really improved the system quite a bit. Now, as the system gets older, you're still going to have to deal with problems such as manholes leaking and some of our laterals that homeowners on the homeowner's side that we can't address because it is on private property. Wade, if you'll go to the next slide. All right. So what you're looking at here is actual I look at. You see the black slash to the left there of the pipe. That one is a hole in the pipe. Here's a part of a wall there, and this is in a manhole that is leaking water into the system, a typical situation. This is a pipe, and if you look at the pipe, you see where it's bubbling up, that's water coming into the system. That's a clear pipe. This is down by the wastewater plant, typical thing. Here, there's another leak in a pipe. And those are the types of things that we run into when we're doing our surveys to try to figure out how to deal with I&I problems. Now, it doesn't look like a lot of water, but this was shot in the middle of the summer when it was dry. So you can imagine as the water table rises within these manholes and also over top of the pipes, you're going to end up with a lot more water coming into the system because the hydraulic pressure increases. So that's what's taking place in that video. And I found it kind of covered everything. It showed the pipes, it showed the manholes, it showed where a interface between a pipe and a manhole is damaged or has failed and is leaking. So that is one of the things we were able to do this summer, just because we went there. We had to do a lot of maneuvering to get the water down so that we could take a look at that manhole. That's manhole number 6. Any questions? Okay, next slide. All right, so this is the overall sewage system for the town. You see all the green lines. This is basically the way it runs. If you come down to the bottom, about the center of the page, that's the Coteen pump station there. That little blue dot there represents the pump station, and that serves basically the westerly subdivision. If you go to the left, you can see 2 pump stations, one located basically on Fisher Avenue, another on Elgin Road. And those are 2 smaller pump stations that pump into the gravity system. If you go all the way down to your right, you'll see the orange or red spot. That's the wastewater treatment plant. And right next to that is the area where well 6, I'm sorry, not well 6, manhole number 6, and also the wet well is. That's where the water is pumped from the gravity system into our wastewater treatment plant. The line that runs, you see it says Jonesville, Jerusalem Sewer, that's WSSC's lines. They pay us, they pay the town a certain amount of money to pump their sewage into our wastewater plant. It's scheduled for 20,000 gallons per day. I think it is.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. So that contributes into our wastewater plant and into what we have to deal with. We watch those numbers and we notify WSSC if it appears that they're having an I&I problem. We have contacted them about I&I problems in the past. Next slide.
Oh, why is that that line there from on Jonesville Road in part of WSSC?
It was an agreement the town had reached back in at some point that they would allow them to tie into the WSSC system. I mean, to the town system.
Does WSSC provide them with clean water?
No, they have wells over there. They had septic systems a long time ago. Then we have contamination issues. So they got rid of the septic systems, and WSSC constructed the sewer system for them and tied it in.
Okay, thank you.
So then how do we understand how things are flowing and what the problem areas are? There's a couple different things that takes place. One, we look at the pump station data that comes in, and we determine what areas look interesting to look at. The gravity system is the largest percentage of the system that we want to look at. So we can take the data from the pump stations, derive that information, and then we can strategically place flow meters to determine what the differentials are in the flows that are coming to various areas. We know that at this point that, let me turn my page here. So for instance, when we're extremely wet, the gravity system, when we get those really high flows, and when we're talking high flows, around that particular day, we may get about 1.5 million gallons in per day, okay, which is above normal for us. So on those days, about 508,000 gallons of those flows coming into the system are I&I, and that's in the gravity system. We do know that we still have some issues in the Hunter Run area, and most areas they do. We expect to see some I&I no matter where we are, but what you want to do is mitigate that I&I as low as possible. So there are standards for the amount of I&I that you would hope to see in one particular place. No matter what you do, you're always going to have a little bit of I&I into the system. So you want to diminish that as much as possible. That can be just some pipes that are leaking that you can't control, like I said, in people's yards. Also, water coming in through manholes that are in the roadway and things like that. Any questions?
Well, what do the colors represent?
That colors there, that is from some flow data that we were doing. And you can see, for instance, we would have set a flow meter as you come to the left, closest to the wastewater plant, which is in that little purplish area right down here. Okay, we set a flow meter upstream so we would know what's actually coming into the system, so we can take a look at it. And we look at that data in various sections. We know what comes into the Coteen pump station, so then we set another flow meter down towards where the red line ends before it gets to the purple area. So we can start discriminating what those flows are and how they're affecting the system. The orange area, is the TAMA 1 and TAMA 2 area when we did those studies, and we looked at those flows coming in. So we break things down so we can try to narrow the area and get a better understanding how the flows are. Some of you may have received a report that I did back in January 13th and was supplied to the town, which broke down the gallons per day of I&I looking at over various periods of time. So that's what that letter was an attempt to do, was to explain where those flows were coming from and what they were values were. Next slide. So when we then looked at the I&I study areas.
Mr. Strong,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question. I understand that you cannot get rid of the I&I issue 100%, but what is like the industry standard? What is the goal? Can you give me like a percentage? Like,
Sure.
okay, we know we're going to have like 10% I&I and that's the goal. Like, can you give me real numbers?
Yeah. So what we would hope to do would be able to drop, hopefully, in the 15 to 20% range. That way, but it's all dependent upon where the I&I issues are. If you do everything, you're still going to have it. The biggest fear is, and it's only a concern, is that a lot of the I&I resides in places where you can't get to it, such as older homes, drainage areas that are not that are in areas such as laterals that leak or drains that are tied in illegally, if you will, into the system. So we do what they call smoke testing, and what we're looking for there is to make sure that we pump smoke into the system, and if it backs up into the areas of the ground that are porous enough, we can see smoke coming up and we can say, oh, well, we have a leaky area here. We also do what they call video monitoring, where we send cameras down the line to look and see what we see, things that we can actually deal with. Okay, so did that answer your question, Lexi?
Yes, yes. I understood that we couldn't be at 100%, but I wondered what the goal was.
Yeah. So when we looked at the flows that were coming into the wastewater plant on a general scale over the years, and then we backed out the I&I, we did some graphing just to see what we could probably anticipate if we were to remove almost all of the I&I. So in 2000, that's what those lines at the bottom of the graph represent. So for instance, in 2016, the flows into the wastewater treatment plant were around 491,000, this is in 1,000 gallons, and you had 43.19 inches of rain. And within that, if you took out the 166 based upon the lowest flow date over a month, using those averages, you came out with 325,000 gallons. It's been pretty steady. We did see an increase in 2020 where the dry flow, if you back out those numbers, was 456. But you also had 54.22 inches of rain. And again, if you back those numbers out, fairly steady. The more rain you have, the more inconsistent it is. And also, it depends on how that stretches out. If you get one hard rain, it may clear out of the system quicker than if it's a prolonged rain event.
It depends on the time of year they have these significant rain events also. When the trees are all bloomed out and leafed out, less I&I gets into the system, and the trees actually, it makes a huge difference from the months that they're deciduous and in dormant state rather than in the summertime when they're bloomed out.
Correct. Any questions there?
Yeah, so could you, this is Jeff again, Mr. Stone. So the blue line is what's actually happening on a year-to-year basis.
Mm-hmm.
And the orange is the I&I. And
correct.
And what does the dry flow mean?
That's if you were to take that that orange line and subtract it out of the blue line, because that's your average flow. That gives you what we call, I'm calling dry flow. Okay, that would be your best condition that you could get.
Okay, so that's really stopping all of the I&I and having only what enters the system from flushing your toilet or using your sink.
Basically, yes. And got to remember that these numbers are based upon the flow data that's collected out of the wastewater plant.
Right.
So there's, even on a dry day, like that video showed, even on a dry day, you have I&I coming in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so this is kind of the gray line there is kind of best case then.
Yep, best case we can hope for.
Okay, thank you.
Based on the data we have at the present time.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. All right, so we looked at various areas, and there is a more detailed report than these little bullets of how much it would cost to do some of these repairs that are necessary to the systems. It's doing lateral lining, the lateral connections. Some of our problems that it's not a problem, well, it is a problem. We know that we were unable to do 6-inch main line to 6-inch lateral connections because the technology didn't exist when we did that work. It was scheduled to be done a few years ago, but the contractor that did that type of work ran into some financial difficulties and ceased doing that work. That's in the Wesman subdivision. We do know so there are sections of the town that have no lateral lining at all. There's no cleanouts, no lateral lining. We also know that some of the manholes around town, and some of the ways we find out that the manholes leak is, for instance, when we had a water line break last winter, we went over to the lateral, over to the manhole. We opened up the manhole because some of the water we would have thought was coming out wasn't coming out. And we found out, yeah, it was leaking into the manhole. So we knew the manhole leaked. We also know that when the water level rises, we're going to end up with I&I, which is infiltration in this case. Manhole 5, 6, and the wet well complex, we looked at that. That was what that video was, part of it, only a small, very small part of manhole 6 that we have to do some work in there to fix that. Now, we did a total cost opinion. It's about $1.3 million roughly to do that. That's considering design, administration, construction, and a contingency in that budget, so that it always happens whenever you do something like this that you will run into an unforeseen circumstance, because we weren't there in 1964 when they built the line. That's how old the main system is in the gravity system. It was done in 1964. Some of you may want to know what the life expectancy of a sewer line is, and also water lines. They are rated at 50 years. Now they will last longer than that, but just 50 years is what is normally anticipated before some type of rehabilitation will be necessary.
Mr. Strong, when I added up those numbers, it didn't come out to 1.355. It came out higher.
Well, all I can tell you is I can't answer that right now.
Okay, that's fine. So I have another question. Recently, well, it's been a little while now, but we took a tour of the wastewater treatment plant.
Uh-huh.
And there was I forget the gentleman who was mentioning it, was saying that this may be off topic, but was saying that the lagoon need to be relined. Is that an element in this overall project?
No, this is not part of that project.
Okay.
That's a whole nother discussion.
Okay. Apparently that discussion's overdue, according to the gentleman that gave us the tour.
Hey, John, I have a question.
Yep.
I remember about 10 or 15 years ago in Westmont, where I live, there was a project. They dug up all of the lines and put in new little caps in our yards. Was that?
Right. That was part of the I&I project that was done. And what it was the installing of a clean out, and then we would line from that clean out. That clean out allows the town to go ahead and drill down the line, okay? To go ahead and to service that line. So the lining portion of the lateral, and that was part of the I&I project that they did and was done under a grant years ago.
So this 130,000 is a different project?
Yes,
Similar.
it was part of that project, but the 130, remember we talking about the 6-inch main to 6-inch lateral? The technology didn't exist at the time.
Yeah.
That technology didn't exist when we did that project.
But that's
Okay.
only a few streets in Westmont. That's not all of Westmont again.
That's
This is what
correct.
couldn't be done at the time.
Okay, so maybe like where Lexi and I live, we were probably covered
Yep.
on Soper Street.
If you have a
Yeah.
clean house, then yes.
And
Okay, yeah.
So what it was is your line, the dimension on your line is an 8, probably it's going to be an 8-inch, a 6-inch to 8-inch, and we could do that at the time.
Okay.
And you are correct. I mistyped. It should be 1.8. 1.8.
Yeah, 1.775, right?
Yeah, it was 1.775, and then a contingency and everything else. Yes, you are
Yeah, yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, yeah, no worries.
Okay, you done, John?
I'm done.
Okay, so let's talk about funding. Currently, we have in our budget $379,000 in our I&I account. So obviously that's not enough to pay for the 1.3 or 1.8. So the options that we're looking at certainly we've done before was the low interest rate revolving loan, usually about 1.2% to borrow the money. And then the American Rescue Fund, also we know there's $4 million coming, and I'm not pressuring the commissioners on that. They need to talk about this and figure out what they're going to do with it. But this certainly does fall in line with what is allowed to do. And then we do have some grants out there also. So we'll see if they, some of those come in.
Well, Wade,
Yeah.
and just my way of thinking, I know there's other people on the phone here. But to me, this is the top priority item for the American Rescue Fund, or that other grant that I believe Bobby and yourself worked on.
Yep. But that's going to be a whole discussion we have too.
Yes,
At the
yes.
commission level, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's also been some previous discussions regarding development fees that would be able to fund something like this. And while they are interrelated, I think that definitely we need to discuss these as totally separate. I don't even like to talk about doing I&I to create capacity for development. That's terrible in my mind. You want to fix the I&I because you have leaky pipes and you have a lot of problems, okay? So like I said before, repairs must happen no matter what. The problem is just going to get worse. And there's no guarantees of capacity that's going to allow a bunch of development to happen. I want to be very clear about that. We've seen our flows from the last 20 years up and down. You do a project like the Westman project, we had great results for that, and then all of a sudden the manhole gaskets in Spates Hill all started getting blown out, and the flows went back up, and so you had to put money into fixing that. And so I just warn you, don't think that your development fees are going to pay for this program. It'll be a bonus deal if you get some, and you can allow some development to occur. And then, in place right now, you have a connection fee that was adopted as part of the plan for the allocation plan. And we talked about the equivalent dwelling units before and how that talked about money. Well, it says in there that it will be in lieu of the existing impact fee, but the same as. And so that current fee is $12,962 per unit, and it increases at 1.9% annually. The funds are supposed to be restricted and spent on sewer projects only, and repaying a loan is something we've done in this same fashion in the past. But just looking at those two projects, if they were to go forward, I don't like to tie them together that much, but that's 1.75 just with the Willard and Bricken at today's rate. That much money could be generated to pay for something. And it is very similar to the wastewater expansion loan. 20 years ago, we expanded the wastewater plant from 625,000 gallons per day to 750,000 gallons per day, added a new basin on and stuff. And we collected impact fees, which was paid this loan all the way off, and it's going to be paid off here in a couple of years. So any questions on that?
So when the town of Poolsville charges a connection fee of $12,962, so that's how much someone pays, but how much does it cost town of Poolsville to connect the dwelling?
They connected. That's another charge which we charge. We don't, the infrastructure must be brought to the property by the developer and connected, and they have to pay a fee for it. And the fee actually is to have John go out and inspect it to make sure it's done correctly. But they also, they have to pay a plumber to come out and actually do it also.
And where does that money go then? So if we collect $12,962 per home,
Great question. In the restricted funds on like the second or third page of the budget, there's a category for connection fees. So it goes to a restricted fund account.
so that's money that comes into the town, but is it spent anywhere?
Not yet, because it really hasn't started happening yet. We're still collecting, like Westerly Grove, we're still collecting impact fees. And the impact fees are part of the 407 homes or whatever it was that were approved in 2001. So we're still on that. We really haven't started the new process yet. The newer homes that weren't on the original list, they will start paying connection fees. And there's a couple that have come in and the money's sitting in the bank.
Okay, so the old the old term or the old process was an impact fee, and the newer term or the newer process is called a connection fee. But
Correct.
I guess it's more or less one and the same thing.
There's just some legal differences.
Okay. And is that money that's sitting in the budget, is that earmarked for something?
For a sewer project, and the sewer project is just now being identified of what it's going to be as we're having this discussion.
And the sewer project is the I&I project.
Yes.
Okay, swell, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to go into allocation a little bit. And Jeff, you had asked earlier about, what does MDE do about it if you go over a little bit? I said you have to be in a hydraulic overload capacity for fines or for them to put a moratorium on you, or they could enter into a consent agreement to make you fix certain things if it's bad enough, or if you meet these criteria. So there's 4 conditions that MDE has. One is if you exceed the capacity for a couple months and then you have an overflow or a system backup. Those 2 combined is condition 1. Condition 2, if you have 2 years of existing flows that go over the 750. So we had that 1 year we did. 2 years would have clicked over and it would have been a problem. But you dropped off 125,000 gallons in the next year. Condition 3, if you're up to 90% of your rolling average and you have spikes that are during storm events, we're close to that one. We're not so far off, only because you have that 1 year, 2018, it really messes your average up because it was so high, but it's a real number. And then condition 4, if you have building permits as we allocate, and we have our list out there, or our plan, if those exceed, they use 250 for in their comments. But if all your plans exceed your 750,000 gallons per day, you're considered in a hydraulic overload. So those are the categories, and then that's when something happens from MDE's perspective. Okay, that's all the guidance they really give you as far as allocations go, and your capacity, how it's related. So we knew that we had. Yeah, go ahead.
If you go back to the previous page, have we approved building permits? I guess that the term is TAPs or EDUs that would put us over 750,000 gallons a day? No, we haven't.
No, that's correct.
Okay, is
What
someone
we
waiting
have-
in the wings to be approved?
Exactly right. And that's what I'm
Is
going to
that
get to
Willard?
next.
Is that the super project, the Willard project?
That's one of them, yes.
That's one of them. Okay, so right at that moment, if Mr. Willard came in with a bulldozer and wanted to break ground, someone would go and tell him no?
Let's go to the next slide.
I guess that would be you. It wouldn't be me.
No, so here's let's just lay it out here. So the Planning Commission in 2016, we sat down and we said, okay, obviously we're not going to allocate 100% of our capacity. Matter of fact, we're not even going to make a list. We're going to make a plan of how to approach this. And it was a 3-year life plan, and it was readopted in 2020. Unfortunately, it was also accompanied by a list. And this list is incomplete. It's missing properties. It doesn't talk about redevelopment. It doesn't include properties that agreements were made and passed, like Cahoon for water taps because they gave the town a well. None of that's in it, and really it was done in consultation with John Strong, with Bobby, nobody, that nobody saw it, and you changed the meetings. And anyways, it needs to be rescinded. It does nothing for it. It doesn't even conform with the plan that was adopted with it. And it needs to be rescinded completely. That'd be my recommendation.
Are there
So-
developments on the list that they expect to stay on the list?
Well, that's a good question. Because it's against the whole plan.
Let's just make an example. If Mr. Willard is on the list, he doesn't
Well-
expect to have the carpet taken out from under him by abolishing the list.
No, the list does nothing. The plan does it all. The plan says Mr. Willard must come in and go through a specific process of subdivision, and then the planning commission would give a recommendation to the commissioners for it to move forward if you have adequate public facilities and it meets all the criteria of the overlay zone.
Okay, because these folks have been, these folks have spent a lot of money, and they're proceeding on good faith that they're gonna be able to make their plan come to fruition at some moment.
Absolutely.
So I don't think we can renege on that.
Well, that's one of the things we're going to probably have to have a little bit more discussion than we're going to have time for tonight. But the reality of this allocation is, everybody uses the word like illegal, and that makes it sound horrible. But the reality is the allocation that was recently adopted that needs to be rescinded not only has errors in it, just wrong things, but the issue is it doesn't follow the resolution, the statute, the law that Poolsville adopted that talks about allocation. And Willard and the rest of the people that are out there understand how it's supposed to happen. And it's supposed to happen, meaning allocation attaches when they are ready to go through the plan. And what I guess, without getting too specific to any plan, is there's a process the Planning Commission uses: preliminary approval and final approval. And what we said in 2015 with the new way we were doing it was, we're not just going to give someone allocation and let them sit on it. We're going to say the person that needs allocation is going to come through the line, and when you get to preliminary approval, we will approve it if we have the resources to do it, meaning the allocation to do it. And that is definitely different than the way it was done pre-2015, which was a problem because what happened is we dished out the allocations like we were dealing cards, and some people just held the cards in their hand and never played them. And so what that meant was, to give you, I love giving you analogies, was if you reserved soup on the shelf at the grocery store and you never came to pick it up, but somebody's standing in front of the counter saying, I want to buy that can of soup, and the grocer doesn't sell it. So what we said in 2015 was, hey, everybody, it's a first come, first served basis, and everybody knows that. What the developers want to know is, if we go through this, knowing that it's kind of like a cash flow calculation. You may not have allocation today, but in 2 years when they need it, if you do the work that John Strong is saying, will you have allocation in 2 years? So everything's a moving target, and everyone understands that. And the more guarantees we can have that we are taking the steps to fix things are the things that they look at, if that makes sense. So we can have more of a discussion when we actually get to how do you rescind and how do we replace and things like that. But that is a major issue.
Well, can I just have one quick follow-up? Because I remember being in more than one meeting at the town hall regarding the Donegan property, which is kind of near the CVS, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
And they came and made a proposal, right? And the reason they came and made a proposal wasn't so much that they wanted to proceed with the proposal, but because they were required by the town of Poolsville to present a proposal in order to keep their tap allocation.
Right.
So they did that. They fulfilled their part, and I think or whoever was behind the table there, the commissioner's table, they agreed that the Donegan property, even though they weren't going to develop it, would keep their tap allocation because they had fulfilled their obligation by coming with a plan. And
you're right.
And then they did the same thing 2 or 3 years later because they had to. And are they on this list that we're thinking about reneging on?
you hit on the exception to the rule. And Donegan is the only exception to the rule in the fact that it was considered when we came up with the plan. So forget about the list, but the plan, that Donegan's development in that area was so critical to the economic development of the entire town that they were allowed to have taps reserved as long as they kept coming back with a plan of what they were going to do. So they are different, treated differently than everyone else because
So
of
they
that.
can,
And
they
that's what
don't
you
have
saw
to
in
buy the
audience
can of,
there.
they can leave the can of soup on the shelf as long as they want.
Right. Well,
Okay.
maybe
And
not as
nobody else
long as
can-
they want, but they
Well-
can make a reservation for theirs so
Yeah.
that it's there if it needs it, because it's considered so critical. And the reason why that is if you look at the bottom of the slide, 60% of the allocations under the plan are supposed to go to the downtown target investment zone. And of that area, it was considered that Donegan property is so critical that we need to make sure that if he ever needs to do something with it, he's not held up because he doesn't have allocation. Far better not to have development on the outside of town or in the outside ring than not have him develop, if that makes sense.
Okay, it does. Yes, thank you.
So I'll just follow up on that too, Jeff. The list has no impact on anything we've talked about here or any property owner that we've talked about here. Donegan was already taken out of the list. We have our 40,000 gallons, 41,950 gallons per day of available capacity. And like Jay said, it was broken down into 3 categories, 60%, 30%, and 10%. So that means 25,168 gallons per day can go to the town center. That covers Mr. Willard. Okay.
Okay.
Then you have your set aside buffer. The town just going to hold this for a buffer for whatever, 12,584, and then residential outside, it's only 4,195 gallons per day. That is what's adopted right now. So the list has nothing to do with the list. It doesn't matter. It's something that's incorrect, and it's the plan is great. The plan is fine. It's the list is irrelevant.
Okay. Okay.
That makes sense. So
This is Carrie. So Jay, are you making this recommendation?
Carrie,
cannot
you're
hear you.
breaking up, Carrie.
All right, can you hear me now?
A little
Yes.
better.
I'm just confused. Jay, are you now making this recommendation that we rescind the allocation list?
I'm saying that is on your targeted radar for things to do. It is not something you can just take a vote to do. It's going to need to be figured out and orchestrated. But yeah, if I had to give a legal opinion, and when we get to that, I will, I'm not sure that the allocation list you pass, since it doesn't follow the rules that you have, is valid anyway. And with the errors would need to be corrected anyway. So in short, this is something when you get to the recommendation slide that we're going to have to examine at the both at the commissioner level and then also the planning commission, because both groups adopted it, or at least checked off on it.
I guess I'm just wondering why this recommendation is being made now and it wasn't made in 2020.
we just now got the list and went through it. Staff has. We've just got the list, went through it, looked at the properties. John hadn't seen it. This is the first time he had seen it. So we haven't had the opportunity to take a look at it.
And the interesting thing
our
is,
attorney's seen it?
I
again?
didn't, there's 2 parts. She's asking if I had seen it before. There were 2 parts to this. And so the actual adoption of the part is what I looked at, but the actual listing of how you allocate it was something that I wasn't privy to or don't recall seeing. Maybe I did, but that list was seen by everybody except the new people on this call. So everybody looked at this and thought it was okay. And it's not.
let me jump in here and take you back on the history wagon for a second. So in 2001, when the list was approved for the 407 homes, 410, whatever it was, there was a plan the Planning Commission and commissioners put together to make a list. And they required applicants to come in with site plans, what they would proffer the town. And so Winchester Homes came in. He had a plan of what he wanted to build. He was going to dedicate a well site. He had $1 million. Brightwell Crossing came in. They had a well site they were dedicated to the town. They had $240,000 for sewer repairs that they gave to the town. Westerly Grove had a well site that they promised to the town. So all this I took all this stuff, and they actually had a plan that they were going to do concentric circles, and they rated each proposal that came in. That's how they developed the list. It wasn't made in a vacuum at all, like what you have now.
Wade, can you give it a little more background then to take it from that point forward, what we did when we basically reestablished the list and put timeframes and parameters on it?
Well, there was always a sunset provision in there. And if you look on like the wastewater capacity stuff, and they talk about allocation, because they require, or they recommend, the MDE recommends that everybody have their allocation plan in place, and have a sunset provision if you're going to give allocation out, just so somebody doesn't hold it. And we did exactly, we had a sunset provision. Now we had to go through the construction of the wastewater plant to upgrade and expand it actually. And so once that was completed, it took us to like 2007, I'm thinking, 2007, before we actually could give out some allocation, because we were waiting for this 3-year rolling averages to go down and have capacity available to be able to give out. And so that kicked it off at that point. And they had to bring the wells on first, and they had public improvement agreements, just like everything else is lined up, all the other developments do. Is that what you were looking for, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, it's close enough. I'm just looking for a little more recent history when we decided to, as a commissioner board, to basically ask all the people that were holding allocations to put their cards on the table.
We certainly did. You're right. The planning commission at that time determined, well, they weren't coming forward. The new plan needs to be established. The old one's just about done. What's the next step in there? I believe it was a master plan recommendation. I'm not certain, but it definitely comes off of that. And that's exactly what they did. They came up with this new plan of, first come, first serve. You have very little capacity to be able to allocate anyways, and you're probably getting close to your 6,500 target population. How much more development can you have? When the new census numbers come in, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then, using the master plan, making the downtown area the primary allocation area, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, the town, and you guys, the town did this on purpose. We wanted to regain control of something that we had essentially given away. Not given away, but we wanted to make sure that we could set these the comprehensive plan and have the comprehensive plan strategies met through these allocations. So times changed. We had some. I know there were people holding allocations for quite some time. In fact, there was talk of them being used as chattel, where could they be horse traded, even something like that. That was just something that we were not going to tolerate as a town. And the goal was to. We had a comprehensive plan. We came up with it. You see the percentages that they're allocated, 60, 30, 10. And the goal was to make sure that we had the resources in hand to be able to meet the town's comprehensive plan strategy.
And that, if I can follow up on that, it's not like, first of all, to make it clear, because I'm even getting confused, is that under the allocation process that is currently in effect, there is no list. Okay, it's first come, first serve.
Exactly.
There is no list.
Right.
Okay, the only one, if I had a list, would be Donegan. He would be the only one on the list. And then everything else is in pile or in buckets that are available for when you show up. So when we say we adopted an allocation, and when I say that was wrong and needs to be rescinded, that is like a planning tool. that list needs to be created. It needs to be agreed upon because we need to know who we have to service. So the issue is we don't want the people that are on the list that we might have to service one day to actually get an allocation of a tap, because they are just ideas, some of them. They're just concepts. They're just raw land, some of them, that aren't even thinking about developing. And
Yep.
so what we're missing here is this list should not have been adopted as an allocation. And you can read it kind of either way when you read what we did, but it should be adopted as these are the people that we need to provide for. And thus you use that number to create the capacity. That's what you need for capacity, which is why you go back to the I&I of saying, how do I get the I&I out so I have capacity for that number? The flaw in this is not an error flaw. It's a planning flaw in the fact that the list is created and valid till 2023, but you don't have a master plan. So the master plan may change and may change the people that would be on the list, if that really is what the focus here is. So it's almost like the list got into the wrong file. The list should be what we need to do to create capacity. And there is no allocation list anymore. It's when you show up with your plan and your money, you get it. So
Which is
maybe
the plan.
Right.
Right.
But from a planning commission, as you know, as the planning commission, a lot of the areas that are on the list, there are no plans submitted for whatever those ideas are. So where those numbers came from, I question.
Oh, as far as the allocations associated
The
with it?
list, what's on the list.
Right, I know. I have no idea either. So is everybody on board with this right here so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So moving on. Martin and I had talked about this, and so I really had some good conversations with Jay. And property owners, any developer can come forward with a plan, submit a plan. Municipalities are obligated to review this. People pay their fees and they can go through a process. Now, we talked about the pending master plan and how that could possibly impact some of these developments that are currently in a review. Unfortunately, the provision for that in the code book that talks about this kind of references if the master plan is under review and there may be an area that could be changing and in process already. The horse was kind of under the barn here. You've already accepted fees and you're under review of the development plans, and your master plan process is not even initiated. So it's really not even appropriate. It's not applicable to this process where we are right now. So I have to say that going through the subdivision regulations, it does specify that no development site plan can be approved unless adequate public facilities are available. So anybody can go through a process, and that plan can have a conditional approval or maybe just sit there on a shelf for 5 years or however long it takes until adequate public facilities are in place. And that's normal. It happens at the county level all the time. John, we've talked about other municipalities had the same type of thing. And it could be for other regulations that are happening they can't meet, but certainly this is pretty standard that this can happen. And so does that answer your question, Martin? I know we talked about this a little bit. Martin, there still? Okay.
Yeah, it answers my question.
Okay. So kind of closing this up here, kind of recommended action items we put together for town staff would be to develop a bid package so we can really see what the real prices are going to be, go out to bid on the project and see exactly where we're going to land on it, and investigate the different funding sources and what would be appropriate for the town and be able to take that package to the commissioners. Planning commission would just stay on course with the site plan reviews. You can only approve something if adequate public facilities are in place. Otherwise, it sits on a shelf. And definitely we need to start the master plan process. And I think we're going to be meeting probably next month or even before then to start to have those discussions. And then the commissioners, Jay is going to draw something up on and lead us down the right path as far as correcting the list aspect of the allocation plan. And then once we get a package together, would be to approve the I&I project so we can move forward and take care of that issue. So that's kind of where we are. Anybody more questions?
Yeah, one quick thing, Wade. Because you mentioned the bid, but isn't that why we have Clark and Azar on the team? Because they do that work?
Oh, no, that will be, I'm calling John town staff, yes.
What?
I called John, I look at John as town staff.
Oh, his company doesn't do the work?
No, they do. He will put the bid package together, go out to bid with it. Yes, he does that work, yes.
Okay.
We do the design and administration end of the project. A contractor who actually does the lining and all those type of things, they're brought in. And we put it out to bid to find the best pricing and also a qualified contractor to do that work.
Okay, so it isn't Preston's crew that do, or
No.
No.
I'm sorry. I should have.
Matthew's crew. Okay.
Okay, that's all we have, I think. I'm going to stop the share.
So are there any general questions?
Yeah.
Or little questions? We have a little bit of time that we can kind of fill some holes.
I have a question that's not directly related to this presentation, but it is related to one of the things that was mentioned at the end. Everyone knows that the planning commission needs to hurry up and start to write the master plan to get that process started. And everyone's also aware that money is in the budget to get a consultant to help on some level with that. I wonder if we can agree at this point to maybe task Wade if he's willing to put out an RFP for people to help with the process of the planning commission, so we can at least, not have to wait till next month to get that process started.
We kind of need to meet and discuss what the scope would be. I mean, you guys, so portions of the master plan are done by John, the technical aspect of John Strong's crew, and I help with the water portion of it. So I think we need to just have a quick meeting to talk about what that scope would be. What are you guys really looking to get out of a consultant?
Yeah, the last planning commission meeting, I was going to meet with the town manager after that meeting to discuss the initial ideas of what the scope of a consultant might look like and find some ideas and present that back to the planning commission. Obviously, there's been a little hurdle thrown in the way there. So I'd love to have the opportunity to talk to Bobby and Wade, get those ideas rolling, and then have something concrete to talk about at the next planning commission meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Brian.
Well, hi, this is Jeff. So who owns this task? Is the task owned by the planning commission or is it owned by the commissioners? And the task I'm talking about is putting together under some kind of comprehensive.
It's the master plan and I mean the planning commission, and I don't think it's really in our best interest to discuss this stuff with the mixed group. We probably ought to be separate when we're talking about these things.
Okay.
Yeah. You're clear. So everybody, the master plan is a complete responsibility of the planning. Commissioners get to approve or disapprove it in whole when it's done, but everything else is done by the planning commission. How issuances of RFPs, the receiving of bids, the decision to pick someone is all a function of the commissioners, not the one that deals with it.
And this may be, Jay, this may also be way off topic.
So you can interact.
You can mute me if you want, but there's some discussion about the planning commission doing the master plan kind of on their own, or having a consultant, I don't know, somehow assist with the master plan. Is that decision been made one way or the other?
That was just the discussion we were having just now, that I'm going to get together with Bobby and Wade to
Okay.
discuss where we feel like we may have some gaps and may want to use a consultant and have those ideas put together, and then put out an RFP to find out, you know, who the right consultant is for what we want to have done.
All right.
But again, I have a little concern. I think Jay was trying to solidify this. You know, a lot of this is supposed to be planning commission only, and there's reasons for separation, right? The commissioners shouldn't be deciding how or what we're going to do with that money. You guys have already allocated that money.
Yeah.
So I think the conversation on that at this point should probably stop, just to keep it separate. And Martin is certainly the liaison for you guys. It's not like we'll be doing things without you guys knowing, but the decisions and the discussions should be planning commissioners.
Sure. Understood.
Entirely. Mhm.
Yeah, I think the only point Jay was going to make, that, you know, when we go out to that planning commission, they do what they want to do, but the commissioners have to award the contract to the consultant. So that was it. He was breaking up. I think he's frozen still.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if we're done or not, but I really want to thank Mr. Strong and Wade, and of course Jay, for making this topic a lot more understandable. I'm very glad that this took place, and I'm very appreciative of you know, your patience with the questions and making the answers understandable. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Definitely. A lot of moving parts to it. So it's, you know, we've done it for so long, it's easy for us. So, but trying to get the points across, it's, you know, it's good to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate the education session, and so I'll stay on focus here. And so I look forward to seeing what the planning commission puts forward as we move forward. And I appreciate being able to have the insight and tools to have a better understanding. So when things come our way to make decisions, we're equipped to make the decisions based on this information. And I know where to go if I have more questions. So thank you.
Okay. You have control, Bobby?
No,
Linda?
Wait, I have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry, and I'll make it quick. So the list we're talking about getting rid of, that'll be, we get rid of the list and we move forward with the first come, first serve.
The plan. I mean, yeah,
according to the master plan.
It's not the master.
It's kind of funny that the list was adopted with the plan, but the list doesn't go with the plan because it doesn't make sense if you read the two together. They actually conflict with each other.
So we get rid of the list and then we do a first come, first serve basis based on our planning principles.
Absolutely. And the priorities in the master plan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anybody else?
I actually have 4 questions written down that I wanted to ask at the end if they weren't answered. So can I run through them real quick? The first one is, John mentioned that he had a report from January 13th that he sent out. Can I get a copy of that? And I don't know if anyone else needs a copy of that, but can that be resent?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think our planning commission people received, I didn't receive it either.
No.
Okay. The other one was that you were talking about the 80% rule and how when we get to 80%, we need to give MDE a plan on how we're going to get to 100%. Can you briefly discuss how that ties in with the municipal growth element and it translates into us developing the master plan?
The technical
Yes,
specifics of it. Okay, I'll go ahead, Jay.
I mean, you can do the technical specifics because that's part of what we talked about tonight. But how it relates to the planning specifics are, if you are 80% and then you have the list, a list of what you're going to do, how you're going to grow, how it's related to master plan, that shows that you're going to be at 110%, let's say, then you either have to change your growth pattern or you're going to have to figure out how to expand your plant, which is not possible for us, or you're going to have to do something else to create capacity, which is what we're dealing with here. So that is how the master plan element is related to this. Simply put, you may not have the budget to pay for and I don't mean money, I mean water budget, you may not have the capacity to do everything you want. And that's how you got to restrict yourself on growth if you cannot create additional capacity.
So let me interject one thing here. In our yearly report that we send to MDE, we acknowledge that there's an I&I issue. The town acknowledges that they're going to be doing some type of remediation to deal with that I&I issue. Also monitoring and continued studying. That's included in the yearly report that's sent to MDE.
This may actually tie in. I know a lot of this is overlapping. Wade said that, we could use the APFOs and, kind of putting a hold on any development or subdevelopments because we don't have the adequate public facilities. But my understanding was that kind of the counterpart is to that we must provide developers with our plans to meet it within reason. Like, I understand that, like, we cannot meet sewer capacity beyond 100%, but that we are required to give them, like, these are the things that we are doing X, Y, and Z in order to create the capacity for you all to move forward. We can't just be like, oh, we're going to shelve you until we have capacity. Am I wrong in that? I want clarification. I understand that we're putting holds on them, or we're looking at putting holds, but how does that move forward? Do we have to give them more than just justification? Do we have to give them a path?
Yes, you're exactly right how you stated it, is that they have the right to go through the development process, and we can stop them, meaning we can give them no approval for preliminary if we don't have facilities that will be available the time they have final. And we can hold them at final if we give them preliminary approval and the facilities aren't available then. But we have to have a clear path of how we are creating to resolve the need, whatever capacity is what we're talking about. But we have to have a path for that. And so that is our concern, is that you can't just let everybody get preliminary approval, because you may not really be able to provide them with it. There is a limit in Poolsville. At some point in time, there is a limit. And that's what we have to realize. And then it's back to the question of how are you prioritizing the use of the remaining capacity? Because once it's gone, and there may not be any more.
Okay, and this, I guess my last thing, and then I will, stop talking. The capital improvement cost total of almost 1.8 million for the whole project that was listed for improving the I&I issue. What is the anticipated time frame to complete all of those multiple steps? There were like 6 different items, maybe 7. I don't have the screen in front of me.
We would anticipate that there would be several different contractors working this project if you all jumped on it all at one time. The anticipated, and you must understand also that these are going to be federal funds that are coming in, and it hasn't been decided how that awarding and process is going to be done yet. We don't have any guidance from the county. Bobby's talking with the county representative at the present time, but they don't know how it's going to be administered yet. So if we go through the process of designing the bid documents will probably take a month or 2. Then there may be something that it has to go out to bid for a certain amount of time. Then a person or a group of people at the county or state level or the federal level have to review those bids. And it can be a protracted time frame. So we would hope that we'd be able to get the project done within 1.5 years to 2 years, but we don't know what the hoops we're gonna have to jump through are in order to qualify and do all the things that we need to do. Is that pretty right, Bobby?
Yep.
Got it?
Don't know when I'm getting the money.
Yeah.
Also, we should talk about it. I mean, we don't have to do it now, but the town traditionally has paid for any of these and all of these improvements. Remember, these are like, we're talking about 30, 40, 50-year improvements. So there's nothing wrong with borrowing money at extremely competitive low interest rates in order to fund any of the directions we go. That's how we've normally done it. We don't just save our money up and put it into infrastructure. Infrastructure is going to be in the ground for a long time. So,
Right.
we have traditionally borrowed money very inexpensively to do this. And it would, one thing is going to be how much money we get from the American Rescue Plan. The other thing is we're going to deal with I&I regardless. So
And that is an important point, is that until a month ago, we never even heard of the American Rescue Plan and that
Right.
we were going to get money. And the anticipation was we're going to have to borrow the money. And I know that all of us, we didn't talk too much about impact fees. Remember, there was a discussion about setting an impact fee for this. And that discussion should be the last thing that we talk about, not because of because it's just not a priority, meaning that we need $1.8 million up front to build this. The contractors expect to be paid when they do the work. So you need to have a pot of money to do that. And an impact fee, no matter what you charge, the amount's not important. That won't be collected until the house is built, which aren't even approved. So you're talking about 2 years maybe before they build. At $6,000 or $10,000 a pop is going to take you forever to pay that back, which means you finance it now using a public financing, what everybody does, and then you do the calculations to figure out, is there a component that the development community should pay, and how do you figure out the whole calculation for that? And so that you're repaying yourself out of these funds. You're not creating a kitty with this fund and then spending it. And that's the normal manner of public finance that you were going to have to do regardless, is that you're not going to be able to cash flow this money. Now, maybe you will because of the windfall you're getting, but it wouldn't change the calculation, because that windfall money, that's what we're going to call it, could be used for other things if we'd already built this, which means there still may be a component that the development community would pay back, because we're using some of the money we could have used for a community center or something else for this, if that makes sense. So the calculations are going to be the same. It's just the source of the upfront money.
thanks, Jay.
Jay, something stood out to me when you were answering Carrie's question. And I wrote it down, but I'm not sure if I captured it properly. But you said something like the wastewater treatment plant cannot be expanded.
Well, I said that, and I'll need the experts to tell you, but and I'll give you the lay opinion, because maybe it's not as technical we can get it, but the capacity of your plant, what you can actually produce through the plant, is based on the loading of nutrients that you can put into your creek, into your water source. It's called a TMDL, total maximum daily load. And right now, you have to clean the wastewater to such an extent to reduce that it isn't really technically possible to clean the water any more than it is, so that you're reaching your maximum daily load cap. So maybe in the future, there's a new technology or something's invented that you can clean the wastewater better that would allow you to produce more because it'd be cleaner. But at this point in time, you can't expand it. So it's not as simple as saying, I'm going to put another tank in, or I'm going to put another pump in. It's just a factor of how clean you can get the water that will go into the creek.
Okay, so,
How's that for
the deciding factor or the bottleneck is really this total maximum daily load, not necessarily how many tanks we have at the wastewater treatment plant.
Right. And the total maximum daily load is set probably by the feds, but at least administered through the state, in how much each creek, each community can put into it, because it leads into the bay calculation of how much nutrients can go into the bay.
Mm-hmm.
And they have restricted the amount of pollutants, which is the nitrogen and the phosphorus, the loads, so much to try to get them reduced that our technology is at the limit of what it can do. And that's one of the reasons John is doing the denitrification process that we're doing right now, so that we can make the effluent, the stuff coming out of the plant, even more cleaner. But it's not more cleaner than the standard. It's going to make the new standard. And so that's why I'm saying is that it's not as simple as saying, let's build another plant or let's expand the size of it, it's just not in the cards, at least under the current technology limits.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question about the allocation policy? So I know that we had said in 2016, or the Planning Commission and Commissioner said that they wanted 60% of allocations to go to the, target business zone, and then 30% to be for town or set aside, and 10% to be for residential. Are those percentages based on what amount of water was left in 2016, and was that already bucketed out? Or is that like a changing dynamic? Like every time there's a certain amount left, only this much of it can go to residential?
It could go either way.
It wasn't arbitrary, but it wasn't based on a calculation. It was a weighted policy decision of, we want to have more for the downtown versus the others. And so you could change those percentages any way you want when you re-adopt the plan. And that's really, when we talked about the allocation plan, it's changing the percentages in the bucket. And of course, your question is the second step is, if downtown uses up everything and there's nothing left, do you start saying, well, downtown doesn't need 60 anymore and someplace else could have it? And that's why you would change the allocation plan. That was supposed to be done in 18, 19, whenever Wade left. It was the December that it was
19.
due.
Yep.
And 19, and we didn't take action when we adopted the new plan, the new list. That was the attempt to reallocate or re-deal with this. So I think what you're going to see on the down the pike is, you're going to look at this whole scheme again and see whether the percentages are what you want it to be.
Well, I guess my question wasn't just about percentages, because in 2016 we would have had, based on our, 3-year average that we submit to MDE, we would have had so much water or sewer kind of capacity left. And if we would have said, well, 30% of what's left in 2016 goes to the target business zone, 10% goes to residential, 30% is town set aside, we would have had a certain amount of gallons per day basically available, which obviously is variable based on our 3-year average changing. But I feel like in the last, I guess close to 5 years now, we've had a lot of residential things come online, but only a few businesses, Dunkin' Donuts, maybe Dollar General probably in there too. I'm just wondering if, because has that been factored in, that maybe the residential has used their 10% that was kind of available, or it just constantly changes after a business develops? Now we have so much left, and now it's again 60, 30, 10.
Can I just mention that, for instance, the new subdivision work that was approved, the Brightwell and the Stony Springs, those plans were approved before the breakdown occurred, the 30% such. Correct, Wade?
Yeah, everything you just mentioned, actually, except for the Dunkin' Donuts, was everything was before that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Planning Commission Chairman, are we finished?
I would love to get a motion somewhere.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
How many seconds?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
See you guys.
Have a good evening. Thank you guys very much. Well done.
Wade, Jay, and
Thanks,
John.